Well, welcome back to another episode of heterochroMEDIA, where we matchmake the oddest double features. I am one of your co-hosts, Spencer.
And I'm one of the other co-hosts, a humble collector, aka Connor.
I'm the other one, Jess, aka Pebis for real.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we're continuing the saga where last episode we were talking about all the wonders of Patrick Bateman in 1987 New York City. And now we're going to roll the clocks back and talk about all the wonders of Great Gatsby in 1920s New York City.
Yes.
What can go wrong this time around?
The roaring 20s, that's what can go wrong this time around.
Are our 20s as roaring as theirs?
I would say maybe not quite as upbeat. Would you disagree with that?
I mean, the 1920s was also marked with the largest insurrection since the American Civil War, so...
Oh yeah, that's true. Nobody talks about that, though.
Only me.
Yeah.
In my hole.
I guarantee you 3 people who are listening to this probably know what that is, and 2 of them are me, you know.
Hey, what if I know?
Do you know?
No.
They sure honest.
Are we going to talk about the Mime Wars?
That's. I got plenty of content on that.
Okay, fair enough.
Follow the link in the corner now. So, a little bit about The Great Gatsby. So, before we go in detail, of course, both movies we've been talking about are both based on very important American novels. Has anybody here read The Great Gatsby?
No.
Literally my first introduction was when I watched it, like a few weeks ago.
Okay, so I read the Great Gatsby. Is essentially required reading in most public schools in America. Like, they hold this up on a pedestal. It's like, this is one of the greatest American literature things. You must read it, and if you don't read it, you're not an intellectual. Okay, you can't go and file your taxes unless you read this book. Okay.
Yeah, like F Scott Fitzgerald.
What do you ever do to you?
Well,
F Scott.
we're gonna get into F Scott Fitzgerald here shortly.
Yeah.
So.
Okay,
I have read the book once. Then at the end of reading the book, we watched this particular version of the movie, and there are many versions of The Great Gatsby in theatrical adaptations.
This is the only one I've seen.
Okay, so
Yeah.
okay, blank slate. This was you guys. I was throwing you guys into the glitz and glamour.
Yeah, no, what? I knew nothing about this book. I knew that it didn't have the letter E in it except for the title. That was a weird.
Is that true?
I think so.
But the green light, you can't spell green without E.
You could call it the Irish light.
Yeah, she got a point. The green light.
I tell you, I read that online. It's gotta be true.
That's a different book, I swear.
I vaguely remember hearing something about that,
Yeah.
but it ain't ringing a bell at the moment.
What's a word for green that doesn't have E in it?
Green.
He just uses dashes instead of E's.
It's like a swear
Use your
word.
imagination on that one.
Yeah.
Oh, the color of grass. There you go.
She got a point.
Bitch, you're wrong, I swear.
I'm telling you.
Look it up
It's
then.
online. I'm telling you.
Shut up.
Right,
No.
keep going.
So, a little backstory on The Great Gatsby. The book itself was notes. For the record, I normally have notes. It's been an interesting day for me and Humble Collector, so I don't have my notes on me. So we're gonna wing this. Released in 1920. Oh, what?
So there's a different novel called Gatsby, written in 1939 by Ernest Vincent Wright that has no E's in it.
All right.
So I'm
Doesn't have any connection with The Great Gatsby.
Is it about him becoming rich?
The plot revolves around the dying fictional city of Branton Hills, which is revitalized as a result of the efforts of protagonist
Not at all.
John Gatsby and a youth organizer.
John Gatsby.
A youth organizer. Huh.
That sounds like a fake name.
Yeah. Who names a kid John?
Well, it's like the meme going around where it's like whenever you talk about like the head of a company, it's the company's name with John in front of it. It's like, oh no, it's John Microsoft.
You know, I think Pink Floyd might have a song for that.
Oh, yeah?
Probably.
Yeah.
So, originally published in 1925, it's an offer written by F Scott Fitzgerald. Well, I'm just gonna go through that one there. This was not his first work. I believe this was his third major novel. A little bit about F. Scott Fitzgerald. He was born in 1896, born in St. Paul, Minnesota. He's an interesting character. He was in the military around the time of the Great War. And
Okay.
he described himself as the single worst staff sergeant to ever exist.
The honesty.
Yeah, at least he was honest.
Mm.
Yeah, it didn't work out for him. So he comes back, and he ends up marrying a woman by the name of Zelda Sari. I believe that's Sayre. Sari?
Sayre? Sayre?
Sari.
Sarah?
Sarah. Yeah, he ends up marrying Zelda.
I don't
We're going to
know,
know her
that's
as Zelda Fitzgerald. And Zelda didn't necessarily want to marry F. Scott Fitzgerald because F. Scott was pretty much poor. Didn't look like he had any future. He was hopeless.
Is F. Scott putting a lot of himself into Gatsby? Is that kind of what we're
More on
getting
that
at
later.
here? Okay.
So, but Zelda eventually decides to marry him, and they get married, and they have a happy first couple of months, and then things get a little turbulent.
What happened?
Jealousy of each other, always feeling that the other's like not being as dutiful as they should be. Yeah, it gets a little hairy. Zelda does end up having a daughter, and she suffers from postpartum depression, and she'll start suffering some other things. But keep in mind, it's 1920s, and take that as you will.
Fair enough, yeah.
So things get a little interesting when they go on a escapade to France, because Fitzgerald decides that it'll be best for them to get out of America away from distractions. So they go to France, and then Zelda starts hanging out a lot with, and she ends up hanging out with this like French guy on the beach, and he's really kind to her, and to like F. Scott, it looks like that she's having an affair. And the French guy's like, "What? No, I'm not involved with her romantically," and like bugs out before F. Scott gets even more pissy. And then Zelda just gets really depressed and really aggravated, and fighting breaks out. It gets pretty ugly. Eventually, God, I am not in the right state of mind for this. it just wasn't a good relationship.
Yeah.
A lot of everybody. There's an interesting point where, at one point, he was working on a novel after Great Gatsby, and Zelda decides she want to make her own book, and he's like, "That's fine." And then she publishes it, and then F. Scott's like, "This is sounding really familiar to my novel I'm working on."
Oh no, so let me guess. F. Scott's saying that she ripped off his novel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a story unto itself. And then at one point, he ended up working, as you're going to find out, as most famous authors, they are not really successful during their lifetime.
Yeah.
So a lot of his books didn't really do so hot. He was modestly successful. He made a lot of his money from working for newspapers, writing editorials for newspapers. That's where he made bank. And Zelda wanted him to keep doing that because that provided income for their family.
Yeah.
Where F. Scott's passion's like, "Yeah, but I want to write the next great American novel. And you're disrupting my concentration." And cue scene from The Shining. This is going to be very heavy on references to get me through this. So eventually, he actually takes up a job in Hollywood. He was a writer for MGM.
Oh.
And this is much later after Gatsby was written.
Yeah.
So he would do screenwriting. He didn't really get a lot of big jobs. At one point, he was brought in to work the script for Gone with the Wind. And he basically decided this was ineligible, and that like nobody's gonna want to watch this trite. And he passed off the script.
We're all wrong occasionally, it's...
Yeah. And eventually he ended up getting into a relationship with a very young actress.
Of
No,
course.
the cheater.
Yeah, you can imagine there may or may not have been, the age limits may have been
Oh.
skewing. Yeah,
Oh, of course.
That's way worse.
Yeah.
Or is it like Leonardo DiCaprio levels, or is it like...
Eventually, Zelda was checked into a hospital.
Girl, me too.
So he spent his final days trying to work in Hollywood, doing basic writing jobs to make ends to make sure that his only daughter could raise it to adulthood to be not as scarred as her parents were. So that is my crappy way of explaining F. Scott Fitzgerald. He didn't have a great life.
No, it doesn't sound like it.
I didn't even really talk about the Great Gatsby and what this relates to. He basically loved, to comment. He loved to comment on the party life of the 1920s, and also wanted to comment on his romantic relationships.
Oh,
yeah, there it is.
This is a brag. This is a.
I don't know if this is necessarily a brag.
Okay.
It is what it is. So when The Great Gatsby came out in 1925, it didn't actually do too well. When he was writing this book, F Scott felt like this is going to be my magnum opus.
He's like, this is the best.
And to some credit, he was right, but not immediately.
No, it took time.
Yeah, it was a modest success, mixed reviews. People really didn't get what he was doing. I think a lot of people thought the plot was convoluted, and they may be right. They may be right.
It is.
So he didn't make the money that he was hoping to make off of this. It didn't really take off until, believe it or not, the Second World War. They were in need of making small booklets.
That's right. Yeah.
The Red Cross was.
No, I have heard this part.
And they needed books to print quickly for the GIs. And of course, they're looking for books that the copyright won't be expensive for. And since Great Gatsby wasn't a big hit, it was affordable to reprint. Yeah. And F Scott Fitzgerald did have successful novels in his lifetime. This was not one of them. It was a big name on a cheap book to purchase. That's how the book really became popular. So when all these GIs came back, everybody was like, "Oh, I just read this great book. Maybe we should have my son read it," and so on and so forth.
Because I know Gatsby was one of those books. Tree Grows in Brooklyn, which I also have not read, I know was one of those books. There are a few others, but they're escaping me for now. Yeah, because what was the movie about the Big Red One? Came out in like the 70s.
I do not know.
Big Red One.
The First Infantry Division.
Oh.
But one of the characters there was talking about like all the different books that he was reading. More on that later. I digress. Continue.
So hopefully a combination of us and editor me has coherently explained the backstory of The Great Gatsby. And now we're going to get into the 2013 adaptation. This is not the first adaptation. There have been many, many different adaptations. Up until this one came out, I think the most famous came out in the 70s. It starred Robert Redford.
Oh,
that was the big one. That's the one that my parents know about. Then this one came out with directed by Baz Luhrmann.
I'm certainly glad to see you again.
I'm certainly glad to see you as well.
I got a bone to pick with Baz Luhrmann.
Would you like to talk about?
Yeah. So Baz Luhrmann came into prominence for his very flashy directing style.
Okay.
I think this is going to be very hypocritical coming from me. It's too style over substance for me.
Fair enough.
Have you ever seen the 1996 version of Romeo and Juliet, or at least know of it? This is the one set in modern setting, but they used the original text. That was Baz Luhrmann. He also did the Moulin Rouge 2001 adaptation.
Okay, another one I have not watched, but I've heard.
You
of.
know
Yeah.
of. Okay,
Yeah.
so he's very flashy. He's very theatrical, which again, this is gonna make it sound very weird and really bullheaded. But I don't like my movies like that. I like my movies being a little more toned down,
Grounded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the plot has to be grounded, but at least the editing and directing style. But I will say this about Baz Luhrmann. I think that his style works very well for this adaptation. To get over the sense of the Roaring '20s, how everything is one big party, everything's a rush, everything's hectic and confusing, and nobody's thinking about the consequences. Because this movie will give you anxiety for how quickly paced it is. and how much is being said.
Well, what's weird, it's quickly paced, but at the same time, it's 2.5 hours long, so it's like...
And I don't really feel it. Until I'm done, then I'm completely tired and tanked out, which makes sense.
Well, how we were watching it, we got like an hour and a half in, and we paused to get another refill on the rum and cokes. And we're like, oh my gosh, there's an hour left.
They're like, what are they gonna do now? Talk some more?
Yeah. I like talking.
What is this, a Russian novel?
It's like
It is a novel.
it's a 20th century novel where they just go to each other's houses and talk.
Okay, no. Side tangent. So at work, I listen to audiobooks while I'm working. I've listened to The Idiot by, begins with a D, Russian author name. He was in an anime that you watched.
Fyodor?
Yeah, Theodore Doga...
I can't
Yeah,
pronounce it.
whatever. The whole novel is literally just people going to other people's houses and talking.
That's
That is the
Pride and
entire
Prejudice
novel.
too, bro.
Yeah. Oh, geez, that's true.
Well, thanks for
Going to
summing
people's
it up.
houses and
Thanks for
talking.
ruining this for me.
That's like what?
This is like the one book I like that we were required to read in high
What
school.
about The Outsiders?
We never had to read that one.
But that's a good one though.
That might be another movie at some point we gotta talk about.
Yeah,
Stay gold,
I'm down
Party
for that.
Night, stay gold.
I think we can all agree on The Outsiders.
I love The Outsiders.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, so without any more rambling, something I may be able to coherently talk about is the plot. So let's get into the thick of it. And for the record, the 2013 movie is a very faithful adaptation of the 1925 book.
Okay, thank you. I was gonna ask you, like,
Yeah,
how close was it to the source
Yes, as
material?
much as I roll my eyes at Baz Luhrmann's editing and directing choices, when it comes to actually the plot, when adapting stuff, he's pretty faithful. Same thing with Romeo and Juliet, because it's word for word the same, just set in a 1990s California. So this guy cares about the sacred texts.
That's good. You gotta care about the sacred text. Hello, dog.
Hello, Dory.
Doily.
So yeah, the movie opens with our narrator being checked into a mental asylum for alcoholism, apparently, and some other stuff. And I can't remember his name. What is his name?
Nick.
Calloway.
So yeah, Nick Calloway.
You don't.
Toby Maguire.
Yeah, you call him Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire. So Spider Toby Nick
The Toby.
is getting checked
There it
into
is,
this
Toby.
asylum for some issues, one of which is alcoholism and drug use and just general anxiety and problems. And basically, as he's talking to his therapist, he's like, "Yeah, no, I used to know this guy named Gatsby. He was really cool."
He's the only man
Oh my
that
God.
And
the only man I
so
respected.
great.
And his therapist was like, "Hey, I'm going to give you this journal. Maybe like writing about it will help you work through your problem."
May or may not make one of the greatest American novels. You never know.
Yeah. So basically, the plot is he moves to New York to become this big shot on Wall Street. And of course, it's the roaring 20s. The numbers only go up. Money is just being made hand over fist. And so, even though he's working on Wall Street, he can't afford to live in the city. So he's living out in like an old groundskeeper's bungalow on Long Island.
Yeah, he's living in West Egg.
Yeah. Surrounded by mansions. But he's living in this little tiny bungalow.
Still looks
On
pretty
the,
nice.
on the water.
I'd live there.
If it
Yeah,
was
it's still nice.
Yeah, no, it's still nice. Today it'd be worth like $10 billion because it's in New York and it's on the water and it has a yard. But his next door neighbor is this guy who's very mysterious, known as Gatsby.
No one knows who he is.
Nobody has met him, and he throws the craziest parties every weekend. And everybody shows up and is there.
Yeah.
Don't even gotta be invited, really.
Yeah,
no,
no,
nobody's invited. They just
people
show
just
up.
show up. That's the
And
crazy
it's
thing.
like,
Break
okay.
through the gate. Go diving in his pools, you know.
Yeah, no, it's like he
Doing
throws
drugs.
the absolute most banging parties, and everybody in New York just shows up. Which makes it interesting because our protagonist is given an invitation.
Yes.
He's the only person that Gatsby ever invited to the party. And so he shows up, and he's way out of his element. There's drinking and music.
Yeah.
By the way, the soundtrack of this movie is really good.
Yes.
Lot of dough.
That too.
Because it's definitely like modern. It's like postmodern
Modern
jukebox
swing,
almost.
yeah.
Like, it's like modern swing. Super awesome. And basically, we're missing. He goes and visits his cousin.
Well, we'll get to that. in a
Daisy.
moment. We'll explain more about
We'll
it.
explain more about Daisy later. Okay.
Don't like it.
So at this party, he's like trying to meet Gatsby, but everybody's like, "Yeah, you don't know who Gatsby is." And he runs into this tennis player he met earlier. I can't remember her name.
Jordan Baker.
Yeah. He runs into Jordan. And while they're like going around this party, eventually he does meet Gatsby, who I think knows Nick because they served in the same division in World War One. Didn't he say something like that? Like, "Oh, you were in the first company and I was in the 8th," or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if he
Yeah.
necessarily knows him directly, but I think he probably looked up Nick's information and probably realized, oh, okay, we have some acquaintance.
Yeah. Yeah, so Gatsby reveals himself to Nick.
In the most memeable way.
Yeah, the most memeable
It has
way.
been memed to death.
Are you going to put the meme up on screen?
Absolutely.
Okay. Enjoy the meme. But yeah, so Gatsby's like, hey, so the reason that I reached out to you is because I have a personal request that I need your help with.
Now we can explain Daisy.
Yeah, so
Some.
would you like to explain Daisy?
No.
You don't want to?
I hate her.
Fair enough.
But hate can make for some interesting content.
I literally. She makes me very angry. I can't talk about it with her without going.
Would you like to talk about her husband?
Do you need to
That
get
douche.
Do you need to get Cartman out to talk about?
What the fuck, guys? Daisy, bitch! Out!
So, Daisy is Nick's second cousin, I think.
Something like.
Something.
They were flirting, though.
Yeah, it was really weird. 'Cause
Yeah,
she
and
kept,
I never got these undertones when reading the book.
she kept insinuating that Nick was in love with her, and she seemed fine with it, which was
She's
very
like,
odd.
oh, cousin. Ooh.
Yeah, second cousin. That's what it says here.
She's married to this super rich
Tom Buchanan.
douche, Tom Buchanan, who makes some comments about everything. Not a nice guy who's having an affair with the wife of a guy who owns it.
Having an affair,
Obviously, it's
misogynistic,
what
completely racist.
Yeah,
Probably also anti-Semitic.
Oh,
yeah,
most likely.
yeah, most certainly.
Wouldn't surprise
Yeah.
me.
Definitely a member of the German American Boon, I'm sure. But anyway, so Buchanan has the house directly across the bay from Gatsby's.
In East Egg.
Yes. And he has a dock, as all these rich people do. And at the end of his dock is this green light, which Gatsby
He's obsessed.
has become obsessed with.
Oh, the green
because,
light, bro.
as we find out, Gatsby was courting
Daisy.
during World War I, like when he was in officer training. And we find out significantly later in the movie that basically the reason that he never reached back out to her when he got back is because he was poor. And so she ended up marrying Buchanan, who's like stupid rich, like crazy. And basically because of that, Gatsby could not face her. So he then decided he needed to go make his own way and become wealthy, and then he could reach back out
Then
to
he's
her.
going to become a homewrecker.
Yes, but
But,
now...
I mean, they were already homewreckers.
Right, but now that he has money, he can't find a way to get in contact with Daisy that makes sense. So he wants Nick to invite Daisy over to his cottage for tea so Gatsby can stop in and run into her and thus reform their relationship.
And you can see why critics in the 1920s called this a mess.
Oh, it's convoluted as hell. Yeah, absolutely.
It's just socially awkward.
But rich people make things convoluted a lot, so.
They need to
They got
follow.
nothing better to do, yeah. So basically, Nick agrees because he's got nothing better to do. And for some reason, Gatsby's got a very charismatic personality. Like, people just like him.
Yeah, that sequence when he's driving with Nick going into New York City, and they're flying. I don't know if cars at that time were capable of that. Well, he had a souped up one, so
Yeah.
yeah, he's flying down, and he's like, a patrolman tries to pull him over, and all Gatsby has to do is show his name, and it's just like, oh, sorry, it just
Yeah.
shows you that Gatsby like has paid everybody off.
Yeah, the chief of police is like his friend who's giving him like special privileges, like, oh, you don't mess with Gatsby.
Yeah.
And we find out the reason for this is the way that Gatsby has made his money is... Do we go into that now, or do we want to wait on that for his whole backstory?
We'll wait.
We'll wait on
Because
that.
Tom's the one who kind of reveals it.
Okay. So, Nick agrees. He sets up the tea party. Daisy comes over. Yeah,
Gatsby has like the greatest stage fright of all time.
yeah. No, he like dives out a window.
And it's like storming.
Yeah, in the middle of a rainstorm while Nick is letting Daisy in.
Yeah. So like, my school did a couple, not my class, but a few years before. They loved Gatsby so much they want to make a fan film. I was originally going to bring it over, but I have to get transferred to DVD. So, but we will watch it. It's like only a half hour, but it's fantastic. And
Yeah.
it's basically going to sum up all of our grievances and our things that we love about this. There's a sequence for this sequence, the cottage sequence, where Gatsby goes out in the fan film. He leaves before Daisy comes over, and Nick's like, what are you doing? He's like, trust me, it'll be very romantic. He goes out, pays this guy like $20 to douse him in water.
Yeah.
He's like, this will be more dramatic this way. And he shows up to the door, and the guy's holding the hose on him. And Daisy mistakes him for somebody else, and then he just breaks like, all of this, I went out in the rain and got soaking wet for nothing. It is. It's a wonderful film.
Well, also, so Gatsby like decks out Nick's cottage with all of these like bouquets.
Oh yeah, do you think this is too much old sport?
Old sport.
Jungle.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is Daisy, upon entering Nick's cottage and seeing all these flowers, is like, wow, he really is in love with me.
He's in love with me, his cousin.
It's like, why? But anyway,
look, we got the Kaufmans. They were an hour down the road from here in a house over a waterfall. So, yeah. I'm just saying.
There's a waterfall.
There was a waterfall, and I'm just saying when we're dealing with cousins and married and rich people.
Yeah, they seem to like incest.
Yeah.
Wow, I just derailed that. Connor's momentum just went off the
like
crazy train.
I was gonna make a joke about anime, but I didn't. But anyway, so Gatsby and Daisy reconnect, and they're talking, and Nick gets basically kicked out of his own house. He's like, well, I guess I'm just going to leave.
Yeah, he just goes out there and stands. He's just like...
He's third wheeling.
Yep.
But thus begins... Basically...
A montage.
A montage where... Gatsby's basically trying to convince Daisy to leave her husband.
Yeah, well, is this where he takes her to his mansion?
Yeah, and he gives her the tour.
And he invites Nick over too.
Well, yeah, of course.
Kind of.
Nick's got to show up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I love the fact that Gatsby has like some bastard descendant of Beethoven just living in his mansion to play the organ whenever he wants. That's like a plot point.
And now to bring in the fan film again for that sequence when they wake up.
That was in the book, right?
I do not remember. I'm gonna assume it is because it was in the parody.
Okay.
So he wakes up and he gets in this little tiny piano thing. I don't know what they're called. I mean, it's like puny, but it's playable. Yeah. And he starts playing Smash Mouth. Look, it was the mid 2010s.
Yeah, fair enough.
It was a meme.
Yeah. But basically, and as they're touring the mansion, they go up to Gatsby's room. And he's like talking about who's the old guy that he was like his mentor.
I don't know his name.
That guy.
Yeah,
that
guy. There was some rich dude that Gatsby rescued from a shipwreck in the Great Lakes, and then like traveled the world with him as like his deckhand for 3 years. And like this guy basically taught Gatsby how to act in high society. How to dress.
Man.
Yeah, basically how to be a dude, more or less. But
unfortunately, when the man died, there was nothing in the will for Gatsby.
Yeah,
the family basically just took it all.
Yeah, I don't think was it explicitly he didn't leave him anything in his will, or that his family like.
I think it was the fact that he didn't make any major mention of Gatsby, and then the family just were douches instead of being generous.
Yeah. You cut him out.
Yeah, they just came in like, hey, we haven't seen our family member for years, but we want the money. So that partly explains where the money comes from, and not all. Well, no, he doesn't get any of the money. So
yeah, he doesn't get any of the money.
Anything. Just explains why he is so charismatic.
Right. But at this point, there's one last party at Gatsby's where Daisy and her husband come over.
Yeah,
and that's the second time that Gatsby and Buchanan meet, because they meet at a speakeasy earlier in the movie with Nick, because Nick's really not so much a character as he's just like
the vehicle.
He's the vehicle.
Nick is Gatsby's little guy.
Yeah, he's just his dude, his friend.
Yeah,
his only friend.
Yeah, but we like Nick Calloway in the movie because it's Toby.
Yeah.
Toby.
Yeah, Toby. It's just peak Toby.
Yeah, he's pretty great. But there's this last party. There's a bit of a confrontation between Gatsby and Buchanan, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so eventually, this whole time, Tom figuring out there's something suspicious going on with Daisy.
He's not an idiot. He's an awful person, but he's not stupid.
Yeah. We haven't even mentioned what Tom's been up to.
Yeah, so
Tom, let's not push around Tom. Mind the fact that he's misogynistic, a racist, and most likely an anti-Semite.
Yeah.
He's also not loyal to Daisy in the slightest.
No, so one of the early parts of the movie is he convinces Nick to go with him into the city, and they pick up his mission.
They go into the Valley of Ashes.
Oh, the Valley of Ashes. The coolest setting in the entire movie is there's this ash field outside of New York City, and it's like a post-apocalyptic wasteland. And in the middle of this, there's an old optometrist billboard with like these eyes that just look out over everything. That's a major plot point in the movie.
Major plot point.
Um,
It's roughly where Flushing Meadows is today in Queens.
Yeah, so it was a real place.
It was a real place. It was a dumping ground in the early 1900s.
Yeah. But in the middle of the Valley of Ashes, there's a car shop. There's a gas station with a repair garage attached to it. And Buchanan's mistress is the wife of the guy who runs the mechanic
so the
shop.
mistress is Myrtle, who is married to George Wilson.
Yeah. And basically, early in the movie, they stop, they pick up Myrtle, they go into this apartment that Buchanan has rented downtown. They invite over a bunch of their other friends, and they just have really freaky parties. That's just like drugs, alcohol.
Yeah, which Nick gets involved with at the very start of the movie.
Yeah, he says it's the second time in his life he's been drunk. Nick is very straight-laced early in the movie.
Yeah.
That does not last.
No.
As evidenced by the fact the movie opens with him being checked into a mental institution with alcoholism being listed as one of his problems.
Yeah. So, eventually, a lot of gibberish happens. Gatsby stops having parties because he's hanging out with Daisy. And
Gatsby's whole reason for having these parties was to get back with Daisy.
Yeah.
And now that he has her, he's like, nah, I'm done. But also, that's how he made his money. So, we find out that Gatsby...
Well, no,
we're gonna wait on that.
So, eventually tensions get high, and how does it start? During the lunch, was it? Eventually, was it Gatsby ends up getting invited to like a luncheon at Tom's house?
At the Buchanans, yeah.
Yeah, so, and it's a very tense luncheon.
Yes.
Because everybody knows who's being disloyal to each other and hiding things.
And Nick and the tennis player are just there.
Yeah, Jordan's just there.
Yeah,
Jordan is interesting. She's she's more prominent in the book than she is in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, in the book, her and Nick have a thing going on.
Well, they
do somewhat, but it's not as much in the movie. It's very... Well, Jordan just stay one. It's like, I have no interest in you, Nick.
Yeah.
Not to be a douche, but in the book, it's a lot more. No, they're a thing during the book. But Jordan's also important because she has she's also using Gatsby as a pawn for Gatsby.
Yeah. Yeah, because she's friends with Daisy.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, so he's using her as a pawn, and then Nick shows up. He's like, "Oh, you're even better."
yeah, you're even better.
You're her cousin who she thinks loves her.
I can work with this. The Lord works in mysterious ways, Nick. Okay. I don't make this stuff up.
I don't make the rules.
But anyways, so Tom decides, all right, we're gonna go to my apartment in the city, where he has his affair with Myrtle.
Yeah.
Because Tom can afford all these apartments. And he does this very weird thing where Tom is like, Gatsby, why don't you and Daisy take my car, and we'll take your car.
That wasn't at the apartment.
Well, they're getting ready to go to the apartment.
They're going from...
the luncheon to the apartment.
Well, no, because they go to... Oh, but they don't go to the apartment. They go to a dining room at the hotel.
No, they don't.
It's in
Is it in the apartment?
Yeah, it's the name.
But like none of the furniture's there. It's just like a table. There's like a couple side tables. There's like butlers that come in with like.
That's the Buchanan residence though. The luncheon's at the Buchanan residence.
No, the luncheon is at the Buchanan residence. But when they go into town, I thought they went to like some club, like private room. I didn't think it was at the apartment. Maybe I'm wrong.
It says the Plaza, which maybe it is the hotel.
Yeah, it's like the hotel. Yeah.
Okay, well they go to the city.
Yeah, they go to the city. Yes, and they do the weird car switcheroo thing.
Yeah, basically just so Tom could just lay it into Nick, like, I know what's going on, and you better spill the beans.
Yeah.
I think that's the whole reason he does it.
Yeah, and Nick's like, I'm just a little guy.
I'm just trying to be a stockbroker, man.
Yeah. I haven't been to work in 3 weeks. I've just been drinking on Gatsby's couch.
I don't want to get involved in your drama, but bro, y'all messed up.
Yeah, you rich people.
Yeah, so anyway, all the Bills are... The Bills.
The Buffalo Bills?
Yeah, the Buffalo Bills. Still haven't won a Super Bowl. They haven't. So eventually Tom accuses Gatsby of never going to Oxford, which is a plot point.
Yeah, so
Gatsby keeps saying he's an Oxford man, but like Jordan, everybody's basically said, I just don't believe him.
No, he says that he went to Oxford, but he's not. But he never referred to himself as an Oxford man, which Tom was, because he went to.
Yeah, I think he was there for he said I was there for one season.
Yeah, he was there for a semester as part of the officers some sort of like officer candidacy thing
Fame.
during World War
The
I.
Fame.
And that's why he said it. So Gatsby clarifies that's why I never call myself an Oxford man, but I did go to Oxford for a few months.
And then eventually Tom basically states what we've all been kind of putting together, which is how Gatsby makes his money.
Yes.
Because it is the Roaring Twenties.
Yes, so Gatsby's parties are a front for fencing liquor, basically.
Yeah.
He's working with some very unsavory characters and is essentially the front piece of this operation. Because nobody in town knows Gatsby's background. Like, there's all kinds of rumors that he's like a German spy from World War One, that he's like the heir to like some fortune or whatever. But no, in reality, he's just like a front piece for all of this alcohol dealing. Yeah. And, well, one of the other things that comes out during this like luncheon, or when they go to the hotel, is basically that Gatsby has basically convinced Daisy that she's going to tell Tom that she's going to leave him for Gatsby. And then she's like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, Daisy.
She gets cold feet.
Yeah, Daisy causes a lot of problems.
Every character in this movie caused a lot of problems.
Yeah. So eventually, Daisy and Gatsby leave in a fit of rage.
Yep.
And they're driving home, and well, they're going back for the Valley of Ashes. And how quinky dinky at the same time, George Wilson's figured out that his wife Myrtle is having an affair with Tom Buchanan.
Yes.
And fighting. So they fight out into the streets just as Gatsby and Daisy are riding through. And I'm gonna cue a clip from the fan film. So yeah, we don't know it at the time. We don't really see much of it at the time, but basically, Gatsby car runs over Myrtle in brutal fashion.
Yeah.
She did.
Yeah,
So
she's very dead.
When the rest of the party from the most awkward afternoon ever drives through the Valley of Ashes, they're like, oh, there are a lot of cops out here.
What's going on?
So they pull over, and of course, it is revealed that Myrtle's dead.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom is like, oh no.
Yeah, and then Tom also tells George like what car, when he's asked like what type of car was it, and then like George basically reveals like, yeah, it was Gatsby's car, and Tom's like, so you know who owns that car?
Yeah, he's
and
like,
I'm not saying that you should go to, you should not go to West Egg with a revolver to this big mansion and kill the man that likely drove the vehicle. But here's his address.
Yeah, here's his address, social security number, and shoe size.
Yeah.
So
Nick gets home, and Gatsby's hiding in the bushes.
hey, Nick.
It's me, your friend Gatsby.
Yeah, and they have one last interaction where basically Nick
And that-
spends the whole night at Gatsby's.
Yeah.
Like, they're just drinking and talking, and Gatsby reveals that it was actually Daisy who was driving the car when they hit Myrtle. But that he was willing to take the blame, basically, to avoid anything happening to her.
Lame.
And also while there, though,
Awesome.
Gatsby tells Nick his true backstory.
I was
which
a
is-
poor boy, nobody loved me.
He's just a poor boy from a poor family.
Yeah, his real name I believe is like James Gatz.
And Nick's like, girl, me too, stop crying.
Yeah, he grew up on a dirt farm in, like, the Midwest.
Yeah, and he did indeed meet Daisy, but before he went off to war, he asked like, could you please wait till I come back?
Yeah.
But well, by the time he came back, she had already married Tom.
Yeah. And also, he sent her a letter that got to her on her wedding day, basically saying, I am alive, but I have no money, so I can't come for you yet.
Sorry, see you in a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you see where the F Scott Fitzgerald things line up.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, so Nick has this, like, real, like, open, the most honest conversation he's ever had with Gatsby. He feels like Gatsby's kind of really revealed, like,
Yeah, so that's
yeah,
when
no,
they,
like, literally, I'm just a fake and my whole life sucks.
So
And
that's when they make out.
No.
there are certain fan versions.
sure there's a
There's
fan-
there's
I'm
fruit.
sure, Jess, there's a
fruity
fan fiction
twinges.
of that.
I know fruit. I saw fruit. I've said fruit.
Is that
Several
it?
times.
Is that gonna be a sticker?
Should
I
be.
hope so.
I saw fruit. I thought fruit.
I'm
know
the fruit
fruit.
police. I can see it a mile
You're
away.
fruit police.
Yeah.
Is it in the same branch as the? Is this the same department but a different branch as the vegan police?
No, we're enemies.
Oh, your enemies. Okay.
Yeah.
Never trust a vegan.
No.
I mean, that, no.
But
So the next day, Gatsby's in his pool.
yeah, basically he's waiting for Daisy to call him. Because they made some kind of arrangement she was going to call him at some point with, like, her answer, I guess, to, like, whether or not she was going to leave with him, which I think is pretty obvious to know at this point, but Gatsby's desperate and not thinking straight. And
I'm not thinking straight.
he's in his pool soaking, you know.
Me too.
His manservant has the phone out there by the pool.
His manservant is loincloth.
It was not in the loincloth.
He was not in the loincloth. Not that bad.
But anyway, so Gatsby hears the phone ring, and he goes to get out of the pool, and then he gets shot in the back by the mechanic, who then shoots himself in the head.
It is I, Dio.
Yeah, no. So in the murder-suicide of Gatsby gets shot in the back by Myrtle's husband, who then shoots himself, and the poor manservant's just standing there like, I don't know.
Oh shit, bro! I don't
What
wanna
just
see all this.
happened?
And we find out in the movie that Myrtle was not, or Daisy was not the one calling Gatsby. It was actually Nick. Nick was in his job. He was worried about Gatsby, and he tried to call him to see what was going on.
That's the soulmate shit right there.
And yeah, so Nick like finds out when he gets home, like, oh, Gatsby's dead.
I'm gonna kill myself.
No.
No, Nick slowly sinks into alcoholism after this, because basically Gatsby has this funeral.
And nobody shows up.
Nobody shows
Just
up.
Nick.
Nick is his only friend.
It's taken out of the book. It's taken out of the movie, but in the book, I believe his father did show up too.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah. And I believe it was a deleted scene that they didn't bother. They did just left out because they're like, well, this was a character never introduced, so.
That would have been cool, though.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, Daisy didn't even come to his funeral.
Yeah, Daisy didn't come because Daisy and her family were moving away from New York City because they wanted to get away from all the bad memories of murdering women and
Getting men killed.
somewhat intentionally setting up the murder of your romantic rival. So they leave. They don't even bother showing up at the funeral.
The press essentially they chalk up the whole incident to that Gatsby was actually the one having the affair with Myrtle.
Yeah,
And then they're like, yeah, he was a killer. You know, he's evil. Yeah, which just further adds to Nick's alcoholism.
yeah. Because Nick actually calls the Buchanans like as they're getting ready to leave, and is like, "Hey, are they not? Is Daisy not coming to the funeral?" And the manservant answers the phone's basically like looking at them. They're like, "We're not here." And he's like, "Yeah, they're not here. They're not coming back. Don't call again." Hangs up. And and then basically Nick becomes a bum, and basically at the end of the movie, he's like wandering through the empty mansion, which is like full of leaves now.
Yeah, by this point, he's at Spider-Man 2 levels. I am Spider-Man no more.
Yeah.
He's at those levels.
He basically walks in with his brown bag and his bottle of whiskey to Gatsby's empty mansion and just kind of wanders
He's
around
like,
for a
look at
little
this
bit.
photograph.
Every time
Every time it makes me laugh.
That's basically where the movie ends.
Yep.
Well,
Oh, and that's it. He finished writing the journal, right?
Yeah. He finishes typing up his journal in the asylum, and the title's originally just Gatsby, and the movie ends with him adding "the Great" to Gatsby, and
because that'll sell it.
Yeah, that's the end of the film.
Yep, that's the end, and that is Gatsby.
So, was Gatsby real?
What do you mean by it?
Gatsby was the friends you made along the way.
Well, I'm just saying. So F Scott Fitzgerald,
Yeah.
did he know Gatsby,
Oh.
There's
or was he
also-
Gatsby?
Really
That's a good question. So another thing I totally forgot to mention. Hopefully my editing self put in. Gatsby had an earlier relationship with a very wealthy woman of a Chicago family.
Yeah.
Really rich Chicago family, and they both really liked each other, but much similar to why Zelda was later hesitant to marry F. Scott. Scott couldn't promise like financial situations, and this very wealthy Chicagoan was like, I really want to marry you, but I can't.
Because you're poor.
Yeah.
Okay, so F. Scott's working through some feelings in this. Is basically
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, he's working through marital problems. He's working through other romantic problems. He's working through his current financial problems.
He had a lot going on.
Yeah, he had a lot going on.
I'm assuming, was he also an alcoholic?
Yes.
Okay, that
It tracks.
that tracks.
All writers. And drug use,
I know.
Yeah, Zelda was too.
Everybody's having problems.
Yeah, that wraps it up here on The Great Gatsby. You know what's coming next. When we end these comparisons, we have the comparison. Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Look, guys, it's not late. That's not the problem.
No, it's not even.
Y'all been up a long time.
Yeah, we've been up a long time, but we're going to finish this. Much like we persevered through the wall, we will persevere through this.
Oh, 7 hours.
Well, this wasn't 7 hours.
Or magnum.
Well, I know, but the wall was.
Yeah, but yeah, please go back if you have a week.
Yeah, if you have
need
some
something to
time.
listen to for the week or for the day, there are 7 hours worth of us comparing Pink Floyd's The Wall to Neon Genesis Evangelion. And if you want to be notified when the next installment of heterochroMEDIA podcast comes out, be sure to subscribe here on YouTube. And also, if you want to listen to sometimes extended audio versions, go listen to us on Buzzsprout. You'll probably hear us get very dark and introspective. And there may or may not be projectile
just like Ava.
vomiting. There may not be projectile vomiting.
I hope not.
I remember that story.
Yeah, we remember that story.
Oh, yeah.
You can only hear about that in the
forgot.
Buzzsprout.
No, I wish I could.
So, hey, thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.
Bon voyage.
Later.